You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. And on today's episode of the podcast, we are reviewing the final of this ICC T20 World Cup for 2024 between South Africa and India. And after winning their first ever T20 World Cup in 2007, India have finally broken the drought for a T20 World Cup and also for an ICC event. By far the best team in this whole entire T20 World Cup tournament, going undefeated from start to finish, which hasn't been done before in the history of the T20 World Cup. And for Virat Kohli to finish off his T20 international career in style with a very important innings to set up this victory for India when needed. And also the Indian bowlers were put under pressure by South Africa's batters in this game, and they delivered to claw India back into the ascendancy and to go on and to win this game after South Africa looked certain to win this T20 World Cup final at one stage. For South Africa, they'll be disappointed. They had this game in the palm of their hands only to be taken away by India at the last moment. The choking tag will be used to describe this result from South Africa, but quite simply, they were outplayed by a very good Indian side who went throughout this entire tournament undefeated, by far the best team in this tournament, and I think South Africa should acknowledge that and say, yeah, we were beaten by a better side, better team. But for South Africa, looking back at this tournament, they played some good cricket at times, and to reach a T20 World Cup final is a great achievement, and no doubt it will be a great achievement from the South African team, even though they didn't win the tournament. But to finish runners-up, it's not a bad thing for them to have on their resume. So what a game it was. It was an interesting game of T20 cricket, ebbs and flows in this final. After we saw very two one-sided semi-finals, it was good to see a final that was competitive and both sides had a chance of winning at different stages of the game. So plenty to talk about from this T20 World Cup final in our match review. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's have a look at the match summary from the final of this ICC T20 World Cup for 2024 between South Africa and India from the Kensington Oval. India batted first and made 7 for 176 from their 20 overs. Kohli top scored with 76. Maharaj and Nortje took 2 wickets each for South Africa. South Africa needed 177 to win. They finished on 8 for 169 from their 20 overs. Klaasen top scored with 52, and Pandya took 3 wickets for India. India won by 7 runs and were the T20 World Cup champions, and Virat Kohli was named player of the match. What were the key moments and key factors from the final of this ICC T20 World Cup for 2024 between South Africa and India from the Kensington Oval? Virat Kohli's innings of 76, plus the partnership he shared of 72 for the 4th wicket with Axar Patel, was vital for India to reach their score of 7 for 176 after they were 3 for 34 in 4.3 overs. Hardik Pandya dismissing Heinrich Klaasen for 52 and breaking that partnership of 45 with Klaasen and Miller for the 5th wicket was key as South Africa were on top and cruising towards victory at that stage of the game. And then Bumrah's over in the 18th over where he dismissed Janssen for 2, bowled that over superbly. And South Africa at the start of the 18th over needed 22 off 18. And at the end of the over, South Africa needed 20 off 12. Only 2 runs and a wicket conceded from the over from Bumrah, and that turned the game towards India's favour. And then Suryakumar Yadav's outstanding catch on the boundary to help Pandya dismiss Miller for 21 in the 20th over when South Africa needed 16 off 6 at the start of that last over, pretty much sealed the game for India, and that was another turning point in this match. And those were the key moments and key factors from the final of this ICC T20 World Cup for 2024 between South Africa and India. Let's talk about how both South Africa and India performed in the final of this ICC T20 World Cup for 2024. And we'll start with South Africa. and talk about their performance with bat and ball in the final. And we'll talk about their batting first of all. Chasing 176 was always going to be difficult for South Africa, especially when you're chasing big runs in a final of a World Cup of some sort. The side chasing are always under pressure, and you feel that pressure. But it was going to be achievable if South Africa batted well, established partnerships, they got themselves in, they've got a very good batting lineup. They were more than capable of chasing down the runs. But they needed to get off to a good start. They didn't do that. They lost early wickets. They found themselves at 2 for 12 with both Hendricks and Markram gone. 2 for 12, chasing over 170. That's the situation that you don't want to be in. But then a good partnership developed between de Kock and Stubbs, which pretty much got South Africa back on track. They added 53 for the third wicket, got South Africa back on track, as I mentioned. When Stubbs was dismissed, South Africa still needed 106 off 66, and that was a required run rate of 9.63 runs to the over. So it was still a tough ask at that stage. And, India firmly on top and favourites, but South Africa starting to claw their way back. And then you had de Kock and Klaasen. That partnership pretty much dragged it back for South Africa. They added 36 for the fourth wicket. It was a short partnership, but very effective, and mainly got South Africa back. They needed 68 off 42 when de Kock was dismissed, and that partnership's broken. So that partnership enabled South Africa to get back into the match. And then Heinrich Klaasen's innings was the key innings for South Africa in terms of getting them back into the match after they were so far behind. 52 of 27 he scored. We know Heinrich Klaasen could be very dangerous. He took on the Indian spinners of Kuldeep Yadav, Axar Patel. They went for plenty of runs. He was very calculated with the way that he attacked the spinners, took them downtown and changed the momentum in South Africa's favour. He added 45 with David Miller for the fifth wicket, which is a very crucial partnership. And then South Africa got it down to a run of ball and needed to see the game home and just cruise home, pick off the singles and the odd boundary. They would have won this game. But that's not how it happened. Things changed pretty quickly in T20 cricket, and that's what happened. South Africa, the pressure. India needed to do something. They were under pressure. They brought back Bumrah. Rohit Sharma brought him back on early. Probably not in the plans of Rohit Sharma to do that, but India needed to do something. And Bumrah's over obviously changed the course of this match. But before that, Klaasen got out to Pandya, and the game changed from that moment when Klaasen got out. South Africa just struggled. And as I mentioned, with Bumrah's over, the 18th over, Marco Jansen joined Miller at the crease, and he was gone for two. Clean bowl by Bumrah, very good delivery. And South Africa at the start of the over needed 22 of 18, nearly a run of ball. Pretty much, you would think 22 off 18, you're pretty much guaranteed to win the game. And then at the end of the over, South Africa needed 20 off 12. So a wicket and 2 runs conceded in that over pretty much changed the momentum of this match. And with South Africa's long batting lineup, their batting's got quite a long tail, South Africa. So you're asking too much of the tail to get the job done, essentially, in that situation. Because do you expect Jansen, Maharaj, Rabada, Nortje, and Shamsi to hit the boundaries and hit the runs at the end? Probably not. And then Suryakumar Yadav's outstanding catch on the boundary to get rid of David Miller when Pandya bowled that rank full toss outside off stump. And it was a poor delivery, but he got a wicket from it. Pretty much changed the momentum of the game. Miller was gone for 21. At the start of the 20th over, the last over of the match, they needed 16 off 6, and that pretty much sealed the result in India's favour, and South Africa left to ruin opportunity that they had. And South Africa had the game in their hands, but they threw it away with some poor batting in the end. They got it to a run of ball, and all they needed to do was just bat sensibly. I think sometimes in T20 cricket, we can get carried away with hitting 4s and 6s. But when you needed 22 off 18 when Klaasen got out, a run of ball, essentially, nearly, just see it home. And South Africa didn't do that. I think the pressure of the occasion, of course, people will mention that about their batting, that the pressure got to them. Well, put yourself in their situation. When you're chasing in a World Cup final of any sort, there is pressure. Of course there is. Teams do it better than others. Like Australia, for example, they know how to deal with pressure better than any other teams in world cricket at the moment. But it's a skill in itself. And of course, people will use the choking tag and say all that. But I think South Africa just got, outplayed by a very good Indian side. I think that's what it was at the end of the day. They needed either Quentin de Kock, Stubbs, Miller and Klaassen. One of those partnerships that were developed needed to go on and needed to be there at the end for South Africa. They needed all of those batters I mentioned to really take it home for South Africa and get them towards the end of the game. They just lost their wickets at the wrong time, and India clawed their way back. So South Africa had this game in the bag, but India very good. Bumrah, bowling that over of Janssen to Janssen and got him out. 2 runs and a wicket changed the complexion. And once Miller got out, that was the end of it for South Africa. So they'll be disappointed, South Africa. They had an opportunity to win this game, but it wasn't to be. So their batting, South Africa, has been a little bit scratchy throughout this whole entire tournament. Their batting hasn't been convincing. The games in New York on that difficult surface early on in the tournament, they were a bit iffy. The batting against Nepal, when they nearly lost that game, they only won that game by a run, was a bit scratchy. So I think the combination of their batting in terms of the lack of depth with the bat has really cost them. The long tail really has cost them. They needed probably another extra batter just to shorten that tail a bit. So probably they set themselves up for this sort of situation to happen where they don't have that batting depth. And then towards the end of the game, you need someone to get the runs. And that's what happened in this final. And it didn't quite happen. So, overall, South Africa, they'll be disappointed. You can see what it meant to David Miller, of course. He had tears flowing from his eyes after the game. He was there at the end. He couldn't get the job done. But really, it wasn't really his fault, really. It was, Klaassen got out at the wrong time. Stubbs and de Kock and that partnership, they just lost wickets at the wrong time, South Africa. And if any of those continued on towards the end, they would have won this game. But, South Africa will probably be better for the experience. And obviously, it's their first T20 World Cup final. They haven't made it to a World Cup final before until this point, either in the 50 overs or the T20 format. And it is a learning experience, and they'll definitely learn a lot from it, that's for sure. Let's talk about the bowling for South Africa in the final. And pretty much, I think they leaked too many runs. In the end, 176 was probably not what they wanted to concede. It was a good score. They had India in trouble early, and not many sides have got India in trouble early in this T20 World Cup. India were 3 for 34 inside 4.3 overs. The big batters were gone. Rohit Sharma was gone early for 9. Pant was gone for a duck. And Sky, Suryakumar Yadav, was gone for 3. And they had India where they wanted them. Another couple of wickets there. This game would have been in South Africa's favour, that's for sure. They would have kept India to a very low score, maybe over 100, maybe 120 or something like that. But then the Kohli and Axel Patel partnership of 72 for the 4th wicket changed things around for India. And South Africa were behind there. That partnership really got India back on track. Marco Jansen had a pretty poor day with the ball. He leaked too many runs, 1 for 49 from his 4 overs. He was the most expensive bowler. He bowled the first over of the match and conceded 15 runs, which didn't really set the tone for his bowling display in this final. The other bowlers did well to try and drag it back towards the end. In Maharaj, Shamsi, Nokia, Rabada, they all picked up a wicket or two, sort of dragged it back towards the end, South Africa, and they were able to keep India below 180, which was probably a good result for them in the end, but they had South Africa. South Africa had India on the ropes at one stage, but couldn't finish off the job there. So their bowling performance, South Africa, was, a bit of a mixed bag, really, in this final. They were on top and then behind, and then sort of dragged it back towards the end. So overall, their bowling performance was a bit of a mixed bag. And overall, the team performance from the final yes, people will say, yes, they choked and, they didn't quite handle the occasion well. And I think for South Africa, for all these players, look, they've done well to be in the final. I think that's a great achievement in itself. I think sometimes we overuse the choking tag with South Africa. But you got to say, at the end of the day, they were outplayed by a very good Indian side who went through the entire tournament undefeated, which hasn't happened before in a T20 World Cup. Probably the equivalent of that happening is probably in the one-day format, in the one-day World Cup, where Australia did that in 2003 and 2007, of course. But India have done that in this T20 World Cup. And for South Africa, they were just beaten by a better team in India. And that's okay to say that. I think for South Africa, they would have been disappointed that they had the game in their favour. They threw it away. That happens with pressure. But I think at the end of the day, I think you just got to acknowledge and accept that, you know what, we did a very good job to be in the final anyway. We went through the entire tournament undefeated up until this point. We made it to a final where people doubted us to be here because of our history and World Cups and choking and all that stuff, the tag that's been used. We just came up against a good Indian side that found a way to win when they were under pressure. And I think that's okay to accept that. And I think for South Africa, it's okay to accept that as well. So I think South Africa should be proud of their efforts. It wasn't to be, but hopefully we see them back in another World Cup final in the years to come, because, what they've done in this T20 World Cup, they've certainly achieved a lot of good things. But at the end of the day, they weren't quite good enough on the day, and India were too good. Let's move on and talk about India's performance in the final with bat and ball. We'll start with the batting side of things for India. And the batting was put under early pressure early. They lost early wickets. 3 for 34 inside 4.3 overs. Rohit Sharma gone early for 9. Rishabh Pant gone for a duck. Suryakumar Yadav gone for 3. And for the first time in this whole entire tournament, India were put under some sort of pressure with the bat. And they needed someone to stand up and get the job done. And that was Virat Kohli. Virat Kohli's innings, 76 or 59, was key in the final. And for Virat Kohli, what a way to deliver in his final T20 international after India won, the tournament. He announced that he was retiring from T20 internationals after this game. And what a way to go out and finish off what has been a very illustrious career at T20 internationals for Virat Kohli. 76 or 59. Virat Kohli, up until this point in the tournament, hasn't really scored a big score. Just some of the scores in his Super 8 games that India played in the Super 8s stage of the tournament, plus the semi-final, 24, 37, a duck against Australia. He only scored 9 in the semi-final against England. And then when the pressure was on, where India needed someone to rebuild the innings, to see them through, he scored 76. And I know a lot of people have criticized Virat Kohli about his slow nature, about anchoring the innings. Well, people realize after he's performed something like this and India have gone on to win, I don't think many people will be complaining, about his innings and the way that he paced it. Yes, it was a bit cautious, but he also had a good partner in Axar Patel, who pretty much did the aggressor role at the other end. But Virat Kohli, he's one of the best players in T20 cricket. He'll probably go down as one of the best in the format, seeing that now he's retired, along with Rohit Sharma, his good friend. But he batted well. Without Virat Kohli's innings, without the partnership with Axar Patel, India wouldn't have gotten to the score of 176. So you got to put that into context. He batted well, held the innings together, Kohli. Also, Axar Patel's promotion up the order it paid off. 47 of 31 he got. He was the aggressor in the partnership of 72 for the 4th wicket between him and Kohli. Kohli was doing his thing. He was, just making sure that he was there. India needed a set batter to remain there, to hold the innings together. Axar Patel did what he did, striking over 151. He hit a few sixes and boundaries to really build the pressure on the South African bowlers. And and keep the score ticking over for India. And he did his job superbly as well, Patel. And also a handy partnership of 57 for the 5th wicket between Curly and Dubé put the icing on the cake. So India's batting has been pretty good at this tournament. And for the first time at the tournament, they were put under pressure in the final, and they delivered. Obviously, Curly in his final T20 National delivered. Patel did well. Dubé played a good knock at the end, towards the back end of the innings, and India were able to get to a score that was defendable in the end. They only won by 7 runs, but 176 was a very good score. So the batting for India really delivered under pressure. Virat Kohli, definitely the standout with the bat for India in his final T20 International. We'll talk about the bowling for India and their performance in this match. The bowling attack was put under pressure by South Africa's batters in this innings and delivered when needed and saw India to victory. The spinners and Kuldeep Yadav and in particular him and obviously the spin attack for India and Axar Patel were definitely put under pressure by Heinrich Klaasen. He really took them downtown, really. Kuldeep conceded 45 off his 4 overs, didn't take a wicket, went for 11 runs and over. Patel went for 12 runs and over and conceded 49, but he took a wicket. And Klaasen was attacking them, dragging South Africa back into the match. And obviously good partnerships developed. De Kock and Stubbs, 58 for the 3rd wicket. And then De Kock and Klaasen, 36 for the 4th wicket. And then Klaasen's innings, 52 or 27. Added 45 with Miller for the 5th wicket. Got South Africa back to a runner ball. And India were on the back foot. They were under pressure. They were really struggling. They looked like, what can we do here now? Rohit Sharma was struggling. He was calm. And I think that's the important thing. India were under pressure in that situation when South Africa were pretty much on track for victory. Klaasen's innings and what he did. And Rohit Sharma brought back Bumrah. He brought him back on early, which I don't think India wanted to do that, but they had no choice because the spinners were getting some tap. Everyone else was getting some tap. He needed to bring on his strike bowler, and he delivered. And that's pretty much the pivotal moment in the bowling performance for India, is that when they needed someone to get them back into the match, it was Bumrah who did that. So obviously before that, Pandya gets rid of Heinrich Klaasen, which was a big wicket. That changed the momentum slightly. But still, South Africa needed 22 off 18. So nearly a runner ball. They had David Miller still at the crease. Janssen can biff it a bit. He can hit it a bit. But they needed to get some breakthroughs. They needed to put pressure back on South Africa, drag it back. And that's what Bumrah did in the 18th over. He got rid of Janssen for 2, bowled him, clean bowled him. And at the end of the over, 2 runs were conceded, a wicket, and South Africa needed 20 of 12 at the end of that 18th over, which changed the complexion of the match. And it definitely changed the complexion, that's for sure. It changed the way that this game played out. And without, Bumrah, 2 of 18, 4 overs, he's a master, isn't he? He's an absolute skillful bowler. And he showed it on display in the final, and that over where Rohit Sharma said, come on, we need you to deliver here. We need you to bowl a quiet over. We need you to get a wicket if you can. And he delivered. And that's what he did. And also, Hardik Pandya getting rid of David Miller in the last over, where South Africa needed 16 off 6. With Miller at the crease, South Africa still would have believed that they could have won this game. Obviously, take it to a super over if possible. So India were a bit cautious with Miller still at the crease. But Bumrah came on. It was a big full toss outside off stump, which was a poor delivery. Miller went for it. Of course, you got to dispatch it like that. He did that, hit it straight down the ground, and it was a brilliant catch by Suryakumar Yadav on the boundary. And an outstanding catch. They practice that a lot, the players, where they catch those balls on the boundary, and that's what Suryakumar Yadav did. It's probably one of the best catches you'll see in a T20 World Cup final, and that pretty much changed the complexion of the game. Miller gone for 21, outstanding catch from Sky, and South Africa pretty much lost the game, pretty much in the Bumrah over, but they also lost the game in the last over of the match when Miller went out. So that pretty much changed the way that the game panned out for India. So I think India will be pleased with the way that the bowling attack came back under pressure. And it's a very good bowling attack that they have, India. And, looking back, they deserve to win this T20 World Cup. They've been, the best team of the whole entire tournament. They've gone undefeated. They're very good with batting, with their batters. The bowling is very strong. The fielding was good, and they deserve to win. And South Africa just couldn't really match it, really. So a fantastic effort from India. They finally break the drought after they won the first T20 World Cup in 2007. And now they've won the second one in 2024. It's been a long wait, especially for an ICC trophy as well. And for Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli retiring from the format, it's a perfect way for them to finish off on a high. Also, Ravindra Jadeja has also announced his retirement as well from T20 International. So for those three players who have been very instrumental for India over the years, for them to win a T20 World Cup, to finish off their careers in T20 cricket on a very good note, is fantastic. And India, by far the strongest team of this whole entire tournament. And no doubt they'll be very pleased with what they've achieved in this whole entire tournament. So overall, a very good team effort from India. And what we saw from India in this final, they were tested with the bat and with the ball, but they kept their cool. They kept their a level head. They were calm. They didn't panic. They backed their abilities and skills to get the job done, and that's what happened in the end. And that's why they went on to win this T20 World Cup final against South Africa. They kept their calm. They kept their cool. They didn't panic under pressure. They knew what they needed to do, and they came back and won this game. And it will probably go down as one of the greatest moments in Indian cricket history, winning this T20 World Cup final. And also the final itself will go down as one of the best T20 World Cup finals that we've seen. Some concluding thoughts on our match review of the final of this ICC T20 World Cup for 2024. Some concluding thoughts to finish on. After winning the 2007 T20 World Cup, India are champions of T20 cricket once again. They were far the best team in this T20 World Cup for 2024, going through undefeated. They were tested at times in this final against South Africa, but found a way to get the job done. They deserved their victory, and what a way to send off Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma in their final ever T20 internationals for India. South Africa had the game in the palm of their hands, but weren't able to finish off the job. But they should be proud of the way they played, not only in this final, but for the entire tournament as well. Thanks, everyone, for listening to our review of the final of this ICC T20 World Cup 2024 between South Africa and India. If you're watching or listening to this episode of the podcast on our YouTube channel, let us know your thoughts on the final of this ICC T20 World Cup for 2024 between South Africa and India in the comments. We would love to hear what you have to say. Thanks for watching and listening. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.